You know how it is, one minute you're hearing about a crypto surge, the next it's talk of a market correction?
Yeah,
It can feel like just this constant barrage of information, right?
definitely. Information overload is real in this space.
So for this deep dive, we've kind of taken a step back. We looked at what really seemed to matter in crypto for the week, starting April 12th, 2025.
Hmm.
And something that, well, it really stood out to us, and hopefully it will for you too, is how Bitcoin seems almost resilient, especially with all the talk about tariffs.
Exactly. We've waded through, adoption reports, the latest market analyses, regulatory updates.
Well, the noise.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
All with the focus on pulling out the crucial insights directly for you. The aim here is, cut through it all, give you a clear picture of the significant trends right now.
And especially that tariff angle, right? How Bitcoin's reacting, or maybe not reacting.
Precisely. It's an interesting thread this week.
Okay, so let's kick off with the big picture. How many people are actually in crypto now? What's the overall vibe out there? What did the sources tell us about adoption, sentiment?
Well, the adoption numbers are quite striking, actually. We're seeing this continued upward trend. About 28% of American adults now own cryptocurrencies.
28%. Wow.
Yeah, that's roughly 65 million people, which is, get this, nearly double the number we saw just at the end of 2021.
Double in that time frame. That's huge.
It really is. It suggests, a much broader understanding, broader acceptance. It's moving beyond just the early tech enthusiasts.
So it's not just the niche group anymore. Does that maybe make the market a bit steadier, less volatile from just a small group?
That's a good point. It could potentially make it more resilient to volatility that's driven by a smaller, more speculative base, more holders, wider distribution.
Makes sense. And is this growth looking like it'll continue? Are people still jumping in?
The data certainly points that way. We saw that 14% of people who don't own any crypto right now are planning to buy some this year, 2025.
Okay, so new money coming in potentially.
And maybe even more telling, 67%. A huge chunk of current crypto owners intend to increase their holdings this year.
67%. So they're not just holding, they're doubling down.
Exactly. It signals people aren't just, dipping their toes in anymore. They seem to be planning to deepen their involvement.
Right. And which coins are grabbing most of this attention? Is it still the usual suspects, or are we seeing shifts?
Well, for folks planning to buy in 2025, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dogecoin are still the top three most desired. Those are the names that keep coming up.
Okay, the big three still dominate mindshare.
Yeah, although, you could argue Ethereum's dominance over some other altcoins has maybe lessened a tiny bit compared to a few years back. But these three, still huge, still attracting the most attention from potential buyers.
Interesting. Okay. Now, let's talk feeling, the sentiment, especially with the current political backdrop. What are the expectations around the Trump administration in crypto?
Yeah, there's a palpable sense of optimism there in the sources we looked at. Around 60% of adults familiar with crypto believe its value will actually increase during Trump's second term.
60% think it'll go up under Trump.
That's what the data suggests. And 46% expect him to push for greater mainstream adoption in the U.S.
Okay, so people are linking his presidency with potential upside and wider use.
Yeah, and that seems to align, with some of his past pro-Bitcoin comments and maybe some appointments we've seen reported.
Right, so a lot of hope there. Okay, let's zoom right in on Bitcoin itself then. Price action, market activity. What did that look like around the week we're focusing on, say, April 19th?
Okay, so around April 19th, Bitcoin's price was, it was fluctuating. The sources had a bit of a range, roughly between, let's say, $67,890 day and $85,131.
85. Wow, that's quite a wide range depending on the source.
It is. But what's particularly interesting is we saw a slight upward trend reported on that specific day, April 19th. So some positive momentum there.
And it wasn't just the price inching up, right? I think we saw something about trading volume, too.
Exactly. There was a significant jump in Bitcoin's trading volume. One report mentioned a 15% increase. That pushed it to $35 billion traded in just 24 hours.
$35 billion in a day? That shows a lot of activity, a lot of interest.
Definitely suggests strong interest, dynamism in the Bitcoin market right now.
We also saw mention of something called a golden cross. Now, for listeners who aren't deep into charts, what does that mean? Is it good, bad?
Ah, yes. The golden cross. It's a key technical indicator. Basically, it happens when Bitcoin's shorter-term moving average, the 50-day, crosses above its longer-term moving average, the 200-day.
Okay, 50 over 200.
Right. And it's widely seen as a bullish signal. Often suggests the potential for a sustained upward price move. Not guaranteed, of course, but bullish.
So the charts are looking positive, technicals are bullish. What about the general mood, fear, greed? Where are we on that scale?
Well, the crypto fear and greed index, that tool that tries to measure market emotion, it registered a score of 72 around this time.
72. Where does that land?
That puts it firmly in the greed territory.
Greed, okay.
Yeah, so a score like 72 indicates pretty significant optimism. Maybe even, a tendency for investors to get a little too confident, potentially. Overly exuberant.
Right, something to watch.
Yeah.
And looking ahead, what are the analysts predicting for Bitcoin's price for the rest of 2025? We've heard some pretty bold numbers.
Indeed. Forecasts do vary quite a bit, as always, but some analysts are definitely bullish. We saw targets ranging from $150,000
Wow.
up to even $200,000 for Bitcoin in 2025.
Okay, $150K to $200, big numbers.
Hi.
Important to remember they're just predictions, though.
Absolutely. Predictions, not guarantees.
Yeah.
But they definitely feed into that optimistic atmosphere around Bitcoin right now.
Okay, now let's circle back to that really intriguing bit we mentioned at the start. Tariffs and Bitcoin's seemingly indifferent reaction. We know tariffs are tools governments use, protect domestic industries, all that.
Standard economic tool.
So what did our sources show about Bitcoin's performance when there was tariff talk or news during that week of April 12th?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting for you to consider. Based on the info we analyzed for that specific week, Bitcoin's price movement just didn't show any significant negative link to potential or actual tariff news that might have been floating around.
So no big dip when tariffs were mentioned?
Not that we saw reflected in the price data for that period. In fact, given the slight price increase we mentioned and the generally positive market sentiment, Bitcoin seemed relatively unaffected.
That really stands out, doesn't it? Because traditional markets often get quite jittery about tariff news. You'd usually expect some reaction, some worry.
You absolutely would. Stocks, commodities, they often react quite directly.
So what could be behind this apparent disconnect for Bitcoin? Is this like Bitcoin finally becoming that truly uncorrelated asset people talk about? Or is something else going on? Could it still be linked longer term?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It does raise that point about Bitcoin's core nature. It's decentralized, it's global. Its value isn't directly tied to one country's economic policies, like tariffs, in the same way traditional assets are.
Right. It's not purely a U.S. asset or a Chinese asset.
Exactly. Its price is driven more by global supply and demand, adoption rates, overall crypto investor sentiment. So while tariffs didn't seem to hit Bitcoin directly this week, it's possible that longer-term, serious global trade tensions, they could create broader economic uncertainty.
Ah, okay. So maybe not a direct hit, but a ripple effect later.
Potentially. If overall economic fear rises, that could eventually influence investors across all assets, including crypto. Even if the initial tariff news doesn't cause an immediate direct impact like we saw, or rather didn't see, this week.
Okay, so maybe operating independently for now, but the broader economy could still play a role down the line. Got it.
Let's broaden out again then. What else was happening in the wider crypto market beyond Bitcoin? Any big trends?
Yeah, we did pick up signals of significant activity bubbling across the broader crypto space. There was that comment from a BlackRock insider.
Oh yeah, what did they say?
Reportedly suggested the coming period could be a monumental week for crypto markets, hinting at possible big moves.
Monumental week. Okay, that kind of talk definitely gets people's attention.
For sure. And that kind of anticipation often sparks more trading interest in various altcoins, not just Bitcoin.
And did we see that? Any specific altcoins getting a lot of buzz or seeing more trading?
Yes, definitely. Major alts like XRP and Cardano reportedly saw a rise in trading volume.
Okay, XRP, Cardano.
And we also saw specific news hitting different coins, like analyst predictions about Dogecoin's price growing. Talk about a potential XRP ETF, maybe especially in Asia.
An XRP ETF. Interesting. Yeah, updates on Solana's network activity levels. Cardano making progress with real-world assets, RWAs.
RWAs, right, bringing physical stuff onto the blockchain.
Exactly. Things like real estate, commodities, and even a filing for a staked Tron ETF. So, lots of different things happening across the altcoin scene.
It really sounds like a busy period for alts, too. What about Ethereum? Number 2, we noted something about outflows from its ETFs. Did that hurt the price?
That's correct. Ethereum ETFs did see weekly outflows. But interestingly, despite that capital moving out, Ethereum's price actually showed resilience. It managed to recover back above the $1,600 level.
Huh. So even with outflows, the price held up okay.
Yeah, it suggests that while maybe some ETF investors were reallocating, there's still underlying support and confidence in Ethereum itself.
Okay. Now, with all this positive stuff, adoption up, bullish feelings, altcoin activity, were there any potential downsides? Any concerns or headwinds you picked up on?
Oh, absolutely. You always have to look at both sides. Despite the growing adoption, worries about crypto security definitely persist.
Still a concern for people.
Yes. That adoption report highlighted that a significant number, 40% of crypto owners, still have doubts about the safety and security.
40% is quite high.
It is. And linked to that, nearly 1 in 5 owners reported having trouble accessing or withdrawing their funds from, custodial platforms, exchanges and the like.
Ah, okay. That's a practical problem. Can't get your money out easily.
Exactly. These are still crucial hurdles, things that need addressing to build more trust and really get that long-term stability in the market.
Definitely key points as the market matures. Okay, finally, let's just loop back quickly to politics. We mentioned the optimism around Trump. Any other political or regulatory things that stood out?
Well, beyond that general positive vibe linked to potentially friendlier policies, there are still, differing views on how much regulation crypto needs and what kind.
The eternal debate.
Pretty much. Some want a light touch, encourage innovation, keep it decentralized. Others think clearer rules are vital for mainstream adoption for protecting investors.
Finding that balance.
Right. And that idea of a national Bitcoin reserve, it's still talked about in some corners, but it doesn't seem to have gained widespread traction or agreement yet. Still more of a fringe idea for now.
Gotcha. Okay, let's try and pull this all together then. What are the main takeaways for you, our listener, from this week's deep dive?
Okay, key points to remember. First, that continued really robust growth in crypto adoption. Second, the generally positive, bullish sentiment in the market, especially around Bitcoin. Third, the anticipation of significant activity across the whole crypto world soon.
And that tariff point.
And yeah, crucially for our chat today, Bitcoin's price action during that week of April 12th seemed largely independent of traditional economic stuff like potential tariffs. It really highlights its unique, evolving place.
So thinking about that independence, that decoupling, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it, what new factor, maybe unexpected ones, might drive Bitcoin's value and stability going forward? Is it all about institutions now, or does that grassroots enthusiasm still hold the key? What's the balance?
That's a really important set of questions for you to think about. As you navigate this incredibly dynamic space, it's just vital to keep exploring these trends.
Right.
To really think critically about the information you see.
And form your own view.
Exactly. Form your own informed opinions. Because this crypto world is constantly changing, and understanding these deeper forces is going to be key to